G'day everyone and welcome to another episode of Practical Powerlifting. It's JP here, host of the Practical Powerlifting podcast. Today's episode, we are talking about pre-training preparation. Now, it's the first episode of the year. I hope you've all had a good Christmas break and a good start to the year. Of course, with a new year comes new goals, lots of motivation, spirits are high, a big year ahead. It's 2026, and so I'm sure a lot of people have had a chance to reflect over your goals over the Christmas break, having some time away from work, maybe visiting some family. You've probably had a chance to reflect on your lifting, had a chance to reflect on if you achieved your goals last year, if you're happy and satisfied with your training and results and performance in 2025, and perhaps channeling some of that energy, some of that motivation into 2026. So I thought, what better topic to start with than one that will be useful to helping you get the most out of your training. Now, today's episode, as I said, is called Pre-Training or Pre-Session Preparation. And this is going to be a bit of a preview into a longer video that I plan on producing for YouTube about how to get the most out of your training in general and just general tips and how to maximize your training for 2026. And the reason I thought of this is, of course, lots of people are very happy with their results in 2025, but there'll be just as many people who feel like they probably left a little bit on the table, probably could have squeezed a little bit more out of themselves, and haven't really been getting the results that they want. And actually, the real impetus for this was while I was away. Over the Christmas break, I went to the Central Coast with Billy, visited some family, visited some friends in Sydney as well. We camped, we trained at some commercial gyms. And the thing I noticed in these commercial gyms was how many people were on their phones in between sets. Everybody's on their phones all the time. And I just couldn't help but think how distracting that is. And so again, I'm probably going to make another post or a part of the big YouTube video about phone distraction in training. But it did get me thinking on how we can get more out of our training. And so with that, let's get into, I guess, today's episode, which will be, pre-session preparation. Now, you'll also notice that in the title of the video, I've put in brackets advanced. And the reason I did that is because thinking about your pre-session preparation is a relatively advanced concept. Now, it's not advanced in the sense of it's so deep and hard to follow. And if you're a beginner, you're not going to be able to understand it. No, it's easy to understand. It's just that it's probably not the biggest fish to fry. It is not the most important thing if you're a beginner or if you aren't achieving the basics, the basics being things like being consistent in the gym, stringing together all your training sessions. The preparation before any individual session doesn't really matter. But when dozens and hundreds of sessions are completed, what does matter isn't any individual session, but the net result of those sessions. It's the average, and we're trying to bring the average up. You're trying to make the bad sessions slightly more towards average, make your average sessions great, and make your great sessions perfect. So if you can kind of slide the scale on all of those kinds of sessions, the net result after dozens and hundreds of training sessions over the next year or 2 or 5 is going to be much different than if you did not make these changes, I suppose. And so I have 2 main recommendations that I'm going to share with you today on how you can get more out of your training. The first one is a pre-lift reflection or pre-training reflection. I don't know if you are a journaler, because I most certainly am not. I don't journal. I don't scrapbook. I don't write by hand in any way. But I know a lot of people do. And you don't have to write by hand. You don't have to be a journaler to see the value or to get the value out of this. What this exercise entails is pausing before a training session, whether it's in your car, in the car park, or in the bathroom, or in the change room when you're getting changed, or on the bus on the way in, or even just sitting on a bench in the gym or outside the gym with noise-canceling headphones on and a pen and paper out, or if you have to use your phone, with your notes app out. And it's having a think about the session that you're about to do and being really clear on what's about to happen over the next hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours. We live in a busy world and a lot of people are in a rush, and so it can feel like a bit of a waste of time to do this. But I guarantee you that 2, 3, or 5 minutes that you set aside to do a pre-training reflection will pay dividends, not only in your actual results and the actual output of each individual session, but it'll actually save you time. Like oftentimes it can actually save you time if you mentally know what the session is going to be involved, or what's involved in the session, or what you're going to be doing. Oftentimes when I run into people in the gym and I say, what have you got on today? They go, I'm not actually sure. And they're already halfway warmed up, but then they finally check their program as to what they're doing. That shouldn't be you. You should have a very clear idea of, 1, what the session involves, what exercise you're doing, what weights and reps and sets and RPEs you're looking to kind of get towards. You should have that kind of like mentally mapped before the session starts. But beyond that, the pre-lift reflection is about thinking about what you want to get out of the session, how you can address issues that you might have had in the past, and identifying where those sessions go wrong and how to address them. So you might have a number of reasons why you feel like your bad sessions happen. Maybe the bad sessions happen because you're distracted. Maybe the bad sessions happen because you run out of energy, or you get hungry, or maybe you run out of time, or maybe the gym's always really crowded, and by the time you get to a certain machine, it's always taken. And so that puts you off, and you end up having to swap the exercise out, and a whole host of other things fall downstream of that. But you have to identify what are the things that are actually interfering with my ability to get a productive session in. What are the things that, if I address these generally low-hanging fruit, I can improve the session quality. And you can do a lot of that with pre-training reflections. So how you go about your reflection can be very personal, but what I recommend is having a few prompts, maybe certain prompts that are like repeated. So you do this, you think about these prompts every time. You might have a host of prompts, like you could literally use ChatGPT to generate, give me 50 pre-training prompts. And every session you might pick out 5 of them and answer the 5. You might have, 3 or 4 or 5 that you've picked out that you know work well for you, that you need to think about. Like I said earlier, when talking about the weaknesses in your session or the things that tend to derail your sessions, you might have certain prompts that address those things. But there's a whole host of ways you could do it. But 3 to 5 minutes before a session, thinking, reflecting, pausing, meditating, and being really deliberate with the way that you walk into the gym. So a couple of examples of what some of these pre-lift reflections might entail or might be. The first one, you might ask yourself, what is the main objective of today's session? So is the main objective of today's session or a certain exercise a strength exposure? Is it a technique check or a technique builder? Is it trying to build or accumulate volume? Are you trying to build confidence, rehab? Every exercise might have a specific role in your program. And so thinking about whether it's each exercise or the session as a whole, what is the purpose of this session? What is the main objective of today's session? So a good answer might be, today is about clean comp style squats, hitting depth on every rep. That might be your main focus. Reminding yourself that that's the thing that I'd stuffed up last week, and that coach told me, hey, you need to sort the depth in your squats. Let's get that right this week. Don't walk in and do your first 2 sets of squats and think, what was I doing last week again? And then check your notes from last week and realize, oh yeah, I was not hitting depth. Oh shit, I don't know if I'm hitting depth. I haven't been recording them. Oh crap. Instead, you should ask yourself, what is the goal of today's session? Again, maybe that answer is clean squats to depth. Then that's the impetus, or that's the reminder to, oh yeah, I should film my sets today. I forgot to do that last week. And suddenly your session quality has increased. Okay, another question you might ask yourself is, how ready am I today, physically and mentally? Really pause for a moment and think, what's my energy levels like? What's my day been like? Maybe you have to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to work, which is a lot earlier than normal. It's currently 6 p.m. You've had a long day out of the house. By having that quick reflection, you think, oh yeah, I'm probably going to be a bit more tired than normal. And then that in turn prompts you to auto-regulate down a little bit, or at least be ready to auto-regulate down in your session. Again, rather than just going in blind and feeling a little bit disappointed when you're not feeling as strong as you might have expected. Or similarly, in the opposite direction, how am I feeling? Actually, I'm feeling really good today. So that might prompt you to be mentally ready in case things are going better than expected, that you could maybe add 5 kilos or 7 kilos to your planned training weights. Another question you might want to ask yourself is, what is the one technical cue that matters most today? And this is actually often a question that I ask lifters before any of their major sets. And this is actually a little bit of a hack if you're a coach, as a question you can ask a lifter who you don't normally coach. So for example, let's say I've picked up a lifter in a comp. I've never coached this person before, but I see they don't have really a coach with them, or they're on their own. I might end up babysitting them for the day. And before a lift or before a comp attempt, I might say to them, hey, what's one cue that you know works really well for you? And they'll look at me and say, I know that I need to screw my elbows. I'm like, great, let's do that. Bars loaded, screw your elbows. And then they go out and they do that one cue. They've basically identified the cue. You haven't had to give it to them. Similarly, in your training sessions, you can do the same thing. Ask yourself, what is the one cue that I need today that is going to make today better? What is the one technical cue that matters most today? So it could be, brace before a descent on every squat rep. It could be screw your elbows. It could be push my knees back. It could be whatever it is. There's hundreds, if not thousands of cues out there, and you've thought about and tried many of them, and you know the ones that have worked well for you. Another question you might ask yourself is, what would a successful session look like if the load doesn't go up? So how else can you define a successful session that isn't a 5 kilo increase from last week's weights? How else can you frame the session so that it is a productive and successful session? So it might be things like, all my pauses on bench are comp standard, or my heels don't lift up on bench, or all my lockouts on deadlift are to comp standard, or I'm finished before 5:30. It could literally be something like that. Like, hey, let's not waste time. I need to get home because I've got to pick up the kids from soccer training, or something like that. It could be anything, but how else can you define a successful session and go out and apply that? Another example of a pre-session reflection or a pre-session question you could ask yourself is, what am I willing to leave in the tank today? So if things aren't going well, what's something that I can pivot on, or what's something that I can just accept that's not the most important thing today? So for example, you might say to yourself, no grinders today. I'm not grinding. I'm willing to give up weight on the bar if it means no grinding. So you're warming up, you're doing your ramping sets, you're doing a three ramping sets, and on the second set, the bar speed's just slowing down. And you might say, no, I'm not grinding today. I refuse to grind. And so on that third set, you decide to either drop the weight instead of ramping up, or you might even just abandon the third set totally. One of the things I love about this as a concept is it means that you've made the decision away from the emotion. It means that you are you're making the decision before the question even gets asked. Oftentimes, it's very hard to answer questions on the fly. It's very hard to answer questions in the heat of the moment when you're full of adrenaline, when you've got very little time to make that decision, when your head's not screwed on straight. But asking the question ahead of time, like, if things aren't going well, what are the things that I can do? How can I make changes? Drop the weight, cut the sets, skip an exercise, whatever it is. Having those decisions ahead of time can be very, very useful. Again, as a little aside, another place where this is really useful is in comps or before comps. Asking your lifters or having a discussion with your lifters and the coaching staff, hey, what are our priorities? And in these situations, what are we going to prioritize? So for example, maybe you're coaching a lifter at a nationals or any sort of like relatively competitive event. You might say, hey, what's more important to you? Breaking the state record in this individual lift, or coming third, getting on the podium for the total? And they might say to you, I haven't really thought about it. Let me sleep on it. And the next day they come to you and say, actually, I've thought about it. That medal is way more important. I'd rather get on the podium. And then in the heat of the moment, in the competition, they need a 245 kilo deadlift to get on the podium, or 248 for the state record. And in the moment, you've only got a couple of minutes to decide. It's the third deadlift, so you maybe have a bit more time than any other lift. But you only got a few minutes to decide. You've already made the decision. You're not under the pressure and stress. The lifter isn't like confused and having the emotion of the moment interfere with their ability to make a decision. Instead, you've already made the decision. Hey, we spoke about this earlier. You, in clear conscience, said that the medal is more important, so we're going with 245 kilo deadlift. Let's lock up that bronze medal, and the state record can fall next time. So similarly in training, we can ask ourselves, where are our priorities? What are you willing to leave on the table today? What changes can you make if things aren't going well? I've given you 5 examples. There are literally dozens, if not hundreds more. Like I said, you can literally go to like an AI chat generator, unless you are totally anti-AI, and ask it to give you some prompts on ways that you can reflect before training, and find a routine or system that works for you. Maybe it's, like I said, in the car before you get out. Maybe it's on the bus as you're approaching. Maybe it's in the locker room or in the change room. Maybe it's even while you're sitting at the squat rack, about to get under the bar. It's also something that, of course, that you might not want to do every session because it might feel a little bit diluted and lose its kind of effect and potency. But maybe it's something that you do once a week on your main sessions. Or you might find yourself really flustered after a day's work. You're rushing to the gym and you think, what would really go well? I should really pause here. I'm a bit under the pump. I feel like I'm rushing. I'm going to pause today and actually have a bit of a reflection. So that's my first recommendation, to get better training sessions done a pre-training or pre-session reflection. My second recommendation for you are monthly themes. And this is something that I've used in the past really well. Monthly or blockly themes, like a theme for the block. I use this with clients. I use this for myself. And that is giving the block or the training block or the training month a theme, some like amorphous, maybe not amorphous is not the right word, but some subjective feeling or even like objective goal. It can be an objective goal, or some way of guiding decisions when you are in the middle of a program or throughout the length of a program. So some examples of monthly themes could be keep the energy high. And this is one that I used recently in my last program, in my last block that I did, which was keep the energy high. I found myself tiring towards end of sessions and quality of accessories kind of going down, sometimes even skipping accessories completely. And so my theme for the past month, or at least for the month of December, was to keep the energy high. So what that means is reminding myself of being upbeat, being energetic, keeping my chin up while I'm training, having nutrition on me while I'm training, listening to upbeat music. So the theme of keep the energy high kind of guides me to do all these other things, right? Like nutrition and music and posture and all this kind of stuff. And then as a result, my output was better. My last sets when I was fatigued were better. I did all my accessories, didn't skip any accessories, didn't skip any sets. And so my theme for that month was keep the energy high. Another theme could be perfect first sets. Maybe you're the kind of person who tends to have the first set a bit janky and then they get better as the session goes on. So maybe you set up the theme for perfect first sets. So what does that mean? How do you actually apply that? Well, maybe that means you start warming up a little bit more thoroughly. Maybe that means you start thinking about your cues during the warm-ups and not by the end of the session. Maybe that means you're doing your activation drills. Maybe that means it's my first set. I'm going to call the coach over or a training partner over and have them watch my set. Suddenly you start doing all these other things to set you up to have the perfect first sets. You can't just decide my first set's going to be my best set and that's what I'm going to do. Instead, the theme guides you to do other things to achieve the broader goal, so the broader goal being perfect first sets. Maybe your theme of the month is calm sessions. Calm. I'm going to be calm. I'm not going to be rushed. I'm not going to be pushed over or dazed. Maybe you train in a commercial gym and you tend to get really flustered when it's busy. It's the month of January, so the gyms are going to be a bit busier than normal. You often have commitments after training, like you've got to get to work or you've got to go pick up your kids or you got to be home by a certain time. And you feel the rushness of it, and the rushness of it makes your training sessions go down. So maybe for the month, your theme is calm sessions, being zen, not letting the time pressure wig you out or make you make bad decisions, being calm. Another theme for the month might be train boring and consistent. I like that one. Train boring and consistent. It's accepting that a training session isn't always fun. It's not always Instagrammable, but reminding yourself, no, the boring stuff matters. I'm going to nail all the boring stuff. So doing all your accessories, doing your warm-ups, doing your rehab, doing your single joint exercises. Again, there are so many themes you could have. Of course, the best themes, and even going back earlier, like I said, about the pre-training prompts or reflections, the best ones are going to be ones that are specific to you or relevant to you. Ones that you generate for yourself, think about for yourself. What's a good theme for myself for the month? What's something that I feel like would address some of my issues or where I'm going wrong or my bottlenecks? But if you're not able to come up with some creative themes for yourself, again, ask Google, ask some friends, ask AI, and you can come up with some really creative themes, some really, really good ideas to kind of help guide your training sessions. Now, importantly, no individual theme is more important than another. Themes are a lens for decision-making. They're not like, this is the one thing that's going to fix me. It's just a way to help guide your decision-making when you're faced with the bottlenecks that you tend to kind of come across. They're not necessarily program changes. You're not like imploring strategies for like your actual program, or they're not tricks for motivation. It's literally just when issues come up or whatever issue I already have, how can I kind of address that by reminding myself to do things right, by taking proactive steps to have productive sessions or productive sets or productive exercises. And again, the accumulative effect of all of that is small marginal benefit across many, many sets and hundreds of sessions the cumulative effect of that can only be positive. Another great benefit of having a clear theme is that it, like I said earlier, guides decision making when things go off plan. So let's say your theme, like I said, my theme was in the past, keep the energy high. If I find myself struggling to get through the session, okay, the theme is keep the energy high. So let's reduce the load, but keep up the pace, keep up the rhythm. Let's not drag out the rest periods. Let's keep it up. Whereas if my theme was, for example, maintain intensity, then that might be a different approach, right? Like that might be, okay, I want to maintain my intensity. I don't want to drop the weight. Instead, I'm going to cut the volume and I'm going to keep the intensity high, keep the load high, pump myself up, and let's just like get the best out of myself for this next one set rather than two sets, for example. So lots of different ways you can go about doing it. But I guess these two recommendations are very simple in theory, but slept on, I guess, in practice. I don't see many people writing down their thoughts and feelings before a session. It's something that I've been doing recently. I write it on the whiteboard in the gym, just a couple of key words to kind of to almost like cues, but not like technical cues, but just reminders of subjective cues on how I want to carry myself within a session. So I guess to wrap up this episode, reflect briefly before every session. Think about what you want to get out of your sessions. It doesn't have to be every session, by the way. As I said earlier, it can be for select sessions. It can be when you're in a rush. It can be in certain contexts. But yeah, have a chance or give yourself a chance to reflect before every session. Make minor intentional adjustments. You don't need to totally overhaul your training and do things completely different and start meditating before sessions. But even minor adjustments, like veering yourself 1 degree towards your goals slightly more than you have been, can again compound in time. Pick a theme. The theme can be for a block, which I'd recommend. This could be something that you figure out in conjunction with your coach, or it could be something that you think about for yourself. It can be just calendar month, which I find really easy. Obviously, it's a new month, so I've got to think of a theme for the month and how I'm going to kind of carry myself in the gym. And my last kind of takeaway, I suppose you could call, would be to judge sessions by execution. Of course, some sessions will be better than others. Sometimes you'll hit PBs and sometimes you'll feel like, oh God, the weight today was feeling heavy and I'm not feeling very strong. And maybe that means I'm going backwards. But it's the execution, it's the sum or the average of all your sessions that matters most. And even though a session might be going bad, like you might miss your top set, or you might feel a bit of a twinge during your back downs and you end up skipping some of your back downs, that's not the end of the session. Oftentimes you've still got more working sets to go or more exercises to do, and you can still get good value out of that the rest of the session. And it can be very easy to get distracted. But if you remember to judge sessions by their execution, by how well you're going about what you have to do, by having a theme or a pre-training session reflection, that might help you kind of stay on track when things go wrong. Okay, a bit of a wordy one, I think, but one that I hope has been helpful for you. I appreciate your time and energy. Keep an eye out on YouTube and Instagram for like longer forms of this. Hopefully not longer by time, but maybe a little bit more thorough and with more ideas, I suppose. Because I do plan on making a video soon about I guess like general tips that you can kind of apply in your training to get the most out of your training that aren't just the typical boring stuff like train harder and do your accessories, but ones that I think are important. And I plan on actually separating it by level, so things that beginners need to do, things that intermediates need to do, things that advanced and elite people need to do. And depending on where you are, these might be more suitable recommendations. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you next time.